Okay, giddy up. So this is about the New South Wales Police Force, or the NSW Police Force. Now we know under Article 1 of the Labour Code, which is adopted by the Hague of 1899, I think it's 1899 and again in the 1907 Hague, it states quite clearly that the presence of a force is the indication of an occupation. The New South Wales Police Force used to be the New South Wales Police Service, so they've gone from once they changed all the paperwork over to all capitalisation and boxed, and started calling us public, and removed all our rights in 1986 with the Australia Act, which is illegal. They started enforcing full-scale military law, and military laws of two types. It's outlined in Article 1 of the Labour Code, and it states that under statute, and firstly that which is conferred by statute, and secondly by common law war. So basically, you've harmed someone, so you come under common law, and they bring in statutes in over the top and saying 7 years mandatory, and they make up these various things like first, second degree and all this kind of stuff, right? So that's all admiralty maritime law. It's lex mercatoria. So this is a privately owned corporation, okay? It's not under any dispute, privately owned company, and the Australian government is this entity here. So this is so the Australian government is a privately owned company. So I can start up tomorrow on the SEC, the Commonwealth of Australia aggregate corporation, and get everyone to sign up as an equal shareholder, and we terminate all contracts with these arseholes, and we join my company. But then you'd be under US law, and then you'd be an enemy of the state, right? So go see Trading with the Enemy Act 1917, and it's March 3rd 1917, and then it was amended in 6th of October 1933 to, instead of being an enemy, was someone outside, a citizen outside the United States, he became a citizen within the United States. So this thing here is a privately owned company. This is actually a statutory body. Now, the incorrect oaths were used to create the Commonwealth, so therefore it is illegitimate. They didn't take the correct oaths. The incorrect wording was used, and it's not under the monarchy, right? It's a Commonwealth. Now people say, well, there goes your argument. It doesn't. This thing is basing everything on this, right? And this is about as illegitimate as it gets. This is tantamount to slavery. Well, this is the definition of slavery: a corporation owning us. And what they're doing is they brought in the fiat currency, and because we're using it, they've taken it away. They can't take that right away. Okay, they can only have. They're the public, right? So they can. They've taken over the public. They're private. They're a corps. The corporation. They're an infantry corps. So they've taken over the public, and they've reclassified us as the public. Now, public comes from the Bible. A publican is a tax collector, so they're saying we're an employee of the state. That's why they call him Mister. You're not, okay? And so what happens is, this is a private owned corporation. This is supposed to be of, by, and for the people, and this will get you out of this, right? And you can even get out of this, right? So this is they're all traps. They're basically all traps, and the rule of law. Rule comes from regular, and regular means a straight stick. So the rule of law is the stick of law. So do what I say, or I'm going to beat you over the head with a fucking stick. Right? Just Google rule, R-U-L-E. Click the Latin, it goes to R-E-G-U-L-A, regula, which means stick, a straight stick. Yeah. So we know that it's this is a privately owned company. Now we'll go to the federal. Does federal law override state law? Yes, it does. Under Section 9 of the Constitution, if a state parliament and a federal parliament pass conflicting laws on the same subject, the federal overrides state law. Section 122 of the Constitution allows federal parliament to override territory at any time. Now, if you don't believe me, we'll just go to trespass laws, and each one of these, Curry versus State, right, High Court overruled New South Wales. New South Wales versus A.B.R, High Court overruled New South Wales. That was when this one's pretty good. This one's amazing. In fact, the police were chasing the son. He was just getting out of jail, and he was speeding, I think drunk driving as well. And as soon as he got on the property, that's on the private, right? So the public can't go on the private. And he closed the garage door. They pulled guns out. They held the door open. They pointed a gun at my mum and threatened her. That was trespassers, like multiple trespassers, right? So she got a fair bit of coin out of that. They can't go onto private property, even if they're chasing you and you've been running away from them. They can't chase you onto their property, onto private property. You haven't harmed anyone. They're chasing you for breach of contract. Every man's castle, right, and every woman's castle is a castle. So here's Plenty versus Dillon. Again, High Court ruling. George versus Rocket, High Court ruling. And then it was Commonwealth v New South Wales, right? So New South Wales lost again. Hang on, and I can't. I'll strike that because I can't remember what that one was about. So now we go to this, where the High Court cases prove that federal overrides state. Now, if I go to police powers, just quickly, I wasn't going to do this, but and I've done it before, but I forget what things are. Let's go to police powers. Pull this one up. Right now. Police have no powers to arrest for service to detain citizens for the purpose of questioning and facilitating an investigation. It matters not whether questioning investigation for the purpose of enabling them to ascertain whether a person is guilty of a crime known to have been committed, or for the purpose of enabling them to discover whether a crime has or has not been committed. If the police do so act afforded exercise such power, their conduct is not only destructive of military liberties, but it is unlawful. So civil means military. Regina versus Savannah. Northern Territory, it's an ancient principle of common law that a person not under arrest has no obligation to stop for police. This destroys the fucking COVID-19 thing, because they're saying you're the public. Again, public is a publican, and they can only control that which they create. A publican is a tax collector. Look at Matthew 9:11, and it clearly states that a publican is a tax collector. It says tax collector. Then you go to KJV, Matthew 9:11, and it says a publican. So a publican and a tax collector are one and the same. They're employees of the state. It's an ancient principle of common law that the person under arrest has no obligation to stop for police or answer any questions, and there is no statute that moves the right. Conferring such a power on police officer will be a substantial detraction from fundamental freedoms which have been guaranteed to citizens by common law for centuries. It should actually be subjects, not citizens, right? So this is Supreme Court Melbourne. Now, this magistrate was right. So police can't stop you at any stage. They can't use an act. There's no common law power vested in police giving them unfettered right to stop and detain a person to seek their identification. Right? This is a guy inside a car. This is correct as well, because they have no certificate of proclamation, and I'll prove it. All right, so we'll get rid of that. We'll go back to this. No, we'll go to that. And so, just to confirm, right? This is a private company. This is the Constitution. Right, here it is here, it's a privately owned company. This thing here, SEC, Commonwealth of Australia is a privately owned company, Commonwealth Australian Government. So now we'll go to the state, federal override state. Now we'll get a bit technical here, but if you stay with me, you're going to like this clip. NSW, that's a word picture, right? It's not actually a word. There's no vowels in it, so it's not a word. So therefore, there needs to be a period in there, right? And so this is how they do it, right? So if you go to Merriam, M-E-R-I-A means, in Latin, it means semen, because the M-E-R is C and I-A is the masculine, yeah, so it's semen. So Merriam Dictionary is changing the lex, and lex means law. So they change the word, they're changing the law, okay, and that's how they catch you out, right? So NSW is NSW government. It's registered to this entity here, privately owned American company. So that's why the New South Wales government, this entity, is not actually the New South Wales government. It's a corporation. Now these guys were created by these guys, and they're even issued an A.B.R, right? So I'll just say that they're issued an A.B.R by these guys. Again, a privately owned company. Now let's go to abbreviations. Dictionaries don't all agree on the definitions of these words, and neither do the Styles Manual. Right, so we attempt to shed more light on this. Now, this is what they won't tell you because you're a publican. You're the publican's dead, yeah? Right? That we have treaties in place for international law which do solidify what these things mean. So you'll have the dead dictionary and you have the living dictionary. You have the public and the private. So according to dictionary.com, an abbreviation shortened to contracted form of a word or phrase used to represent the whole as DR point. So if you just said DR, the kid would go, what does that mean? I'm DR. But he knows what a doctor is. And the point begs the question. The point is the thing that says there's something else attached to the root. Right? And so the United States, the dot says there's something. It's babble, right? So the dot signifies there's something else attached to the capitalization to say that there's a word there. If you don't have it there, there's no sequence, there's no mathematics behind the creation of the word. It's like you take the first letter of each one, you put a dot there, and then you join them together, and the dots separate the two to say that they're two separate words. That's the algebra. Now I'll fucking prove it, right? Now, the use of symbols and the method of combining them so to convey to the mind at a single glance a long process of reasoning was an invention considerably later than Leonardo's time. So the use of symbols, dots and letters, right, and colons and slashes and forward slashes and other the use of symbols and the method of combining them so that to convey to the mind at a single glance a long process of reasoning was an intention considered later by Leonardo's time. Considerable attention was given to the cultivation of algebra between the time of Leonardo and the invention of printing. See, it talks about algebra and printing. This is algebraic, right? It was publicly taught by professors. Treaties were composed on the subject, and 2 works of Oriental algebras were translated from the Arabian language into Italian. One was entitled Rule of Algebra, right? The straight stick of algebra. I just told you what rule is, comes from regular, R-E-G-U-L-A, right? And which means straight stick. And the other was the oldest of all the Arabian treaties that Muhammad bin Musa of Khorasan. So these guys took these treaties because it comes out of Sumer, when Sumer came out of India, which is Indo-European, right? So it just went around a big circle, right? And so India was kind of, fell into, lost a lot of their language. They didn't, the use of it. And so basically, and this is adopted by the Italians, which is where the Latin comes from, which is where, Sumer and all this kind of stuff. This is where the Kemetic alphabet came from. So this came with the Kemetic alphabet to Italy. Okay, the earliest printed book on algebra was composed by Lucas. There's Lucifer, Paciulus, and Lucifer de Burgo. Now, Burgo is Berg, as in Spielberg, and it's also, unfortunately, where you get the name Burke comes from. I just worked this out the other day, because Berg in Germanic means a fortress, and Burke also means a fortress. So, the letters are identical except for the G and the K. I'm a Minorite friar, yeah. So Minos means to harm earth, yeah, harm people. Right. It was first printed in 1494, and again, because these guys go down and confound the speech, yeah. Again in 1523. The title is Sumia. There's Summa right there. The arithmetic, geometric proportions, and prepositional A.T.O. Now, you're probably saying, well, this is arithmetic. Yeah, well, the A is 1, the B is 2, and so on. And then this is geometry right here, right? This is all geometry. It went from being pictographs, which are M is the C, A is the alpha. It went from being pictographs to basically geographs, right? Or geoglyphs, right? Or hieroglyphs, right? So, and there's a mathematical proportionality and spatiality to it. right? This is a very complete treaty on the arithmetic of algebra and the geometry for the time at which it appeared. Now, this is talking about algebra. The author followed the close steps of Leonardo, and indeed it is from this work that that one of his lost treaties have been restored. So this is all got to do with the use of symbols and the methods of combining them so as to convey to the mind a single glance, a long process of reasoning. Reasoning is what I'm doing now, and invention of considerable later. So what I'm trying to say is there are treaties on the use of periods and full stops, and they've been getting removed in the Western world, and they are getting adopted in the East, right? So now we'll show the word Oxford. The word Oxford has no meaning. Type, lay, shoe, da da da. Right? So it has no meaning, right? I'm going to tell you what the meaning of the word Oxford is, right? Name Oxford, oxen and crossing. Okay, it's almost there, right? So I'm using the Kemetic alphabet. Cambridge, Massachusetts, Harvard style, da da. What is the meaning? No, so it doesn't tell you Cambridge meaning. It doesn't give you any meaning, right? This is a clue right here. The main difference between Oxford and Cambridge dictionaries is the Oxford Dictionary is published by the Oxford Press, whereas the Cambridge Dictionary is published by the Cambridge University Press. Cambridge Dictionary tends to focus on more modern usage of terms and their respective meanings. So Cambridge is for the public and Oxford is for the private. And I'll explain how. So now we'll go to the next one. Right, so yes, I've gone through and done all this. Took me a good hour and a bit, 2 hours. So Oxford. Ox is the alpha, 4 is the future, and D is the doorway. Camber is to bend, and bridges have camber in them. Cambridge, right? And if you put it, it should be called Cambridged. Doorway to bridging and bending. Yeah. So bend the bridge, doorway to the mind. Alpha, future, doorway. So this is the doorway to the future leader, right? This is the joining. It's a bridge between two parties, and it's a camber. Yeah. So you're fixed in your mindset. They need to bend it, right? They need to bend your mindset and bridge it between two entities, their mind and your mind. So Cambridge is very big for pumping out lots of spies, the Liberal and Labor side. They're into the political side of things, and Oxford pumps out a lot of scholars, they all do, but a lot of leaders. A lot of world leaders go to Oxford, right? Alpha, future, doorway to the mind, bend, a bridge to the mind. So they're telling you in the name of the words, one is for the leaders, one is for the handlers, right? And who went to Cambridge? Roland Lorien. Okay, now, some people are going, get the fuck out. If you knew Lorien like Roland, you'd be... the only reason I'm looking this stuff up is because of the way this fucker acts, right? And the people around him. Now, let's look at the New South Wales Police Force then. Come back to New South Wales Police Force. So the New South Wales Police Force was created in 1999. No, it wasn't. Okay, so... it was created in... these guys are saying... Hang on. New South Wales Police Force... So... Australian Business... Okay, so... The A.B.R... Right, which is what the New South Wales Police Force... damn it, don't want to lose my train. Okay, so the New South Wales Police Force, through the privately owned company, are issued an ABN. Now the ABN is created by the A.B.R, so it's the Australian Business Registrar, right? And the A.T.O issues. So when was that? That was 1999, and it says 1999 here. So the this says the new tax system, A.B.R, and it was 17th of January 2013, and this was from the 1st of November. So this is in the same year. And so the private company issues an A.B.R number to the colony of New South Wales, actually the corporation. So NSW Gov got their identity from these guys. Then the New South Wales Police, then they create the New South Wales Police Force, and then they get their identity from these guys through an A.B.R. But the New South Wales Police Force were created in 1990. How is that possible? Right, so Police Act 1990, Section 47, right? And establishment of the New South Wales Police Force. So the New South Wales Police Force were established before they had an ABN, and before the A.B.R. was even around. So this explains, I got a bit tongue-tied there, but this explains why the New South Wales Police Force came into being, and then they disappeared, went back to being the New South Wales Police Service, and then they had to wait for this stuff to happen before they could be this fiction, before they could become before they could come back into the public realm. So this was created in 99. This was created in 99, but this is saying they were created in 1990, but they had no A.B.R. because they're a corporation, right? So now we go to the Australian Taxation Office, right? And that says they were created in the 11th of November 1910. This is fraud by Google, by the way, and it's also fraud by the privately owned company, right? The Australian government. This is a privately owned company. So this is who was actually created. The Commonwealth Taxation Office, Federal Taxation Office, right? These guys were created on 11th of November 1999. These guys weren't, right? How do I know? How do I know? How does a fucking idiot tradesman know? A lot of people are going, yeah, at least you're an idiot. How does, where'd it go? There it is, hiding down the back. So how do I know? Because I've got the transcript that says, yeah. Because I've got the fucking transcript, right? So this transcript says the A.T.O is not a legal entity. This transcript says the tax commissioner was around before the A.T.O, right? And where are we? So formed. So the tax commissioner and all the various entities were formed on 1910, right? 11th of November, right? So how does this entity that doesn't exist claim to have been created in 1910, right? How can this entity claim to have existed, right? It can't, right? You can't put the fucking you can't put the chicken before the egg before the chicken. Maybe you can, I don't know, but yeah. So this is who was formed in 1910. This is who wasn't formed in 1910 because these weren't around in 1910. Right, now let's go to this. This proves the Commonwealth of Australia is a private. It doesn't say the date actually. You can go to the date. Dates and it's free information. I'm not going to click on that because I'm not hooked up. So now we'll go to any corporation. Right. So this is about corporations registered to the United States, vessels of the United States. The term vessel of the United States, as used in this title, means a vessel belonging to, in whole or in part, to the United States, or any citizen that's registered to the United States, or any corporation that's registered to the United States, created under the United States, under laws of the United States, or of any state, territory, and district, or possession thereof. So you're a citizen or a corporation and a vessel of the United States if you're a citizen of a possession of the United States. So state, territory, district, right? So they're saying New South Wales, the 6 states, are the possession of the United States, and therefore you've registered to them, so now you're saying you're possession. So it tells you here, section 15, right? So this is Cornell law. It's all Cornell law, by the way, in case you didn't notice. This is 18 U.S.C. Code 9, vessel of the United States. This is Title 28, subsection 3002, subsection 15. And it says United States is a federal corporation. So then we'll go to history of the New South Police Force's largest organisation, and it's the Night's Watch. So this is all bullshit because the New South Wales Police Force didn't come into existence until 1990 under an act which had no proclamation certificate, and the Australia Act is invalid, and I'll prove that in Molokai v. Chapman in a minute. I'll prove that not only was the Mylockerby Chapman invalid, I'll actually prove that this coat of arms is invalid because King Edward wasn't coronated when he signed off on it. So here we have, this is trespass, right? So New South Wales versus A.B.R. Now, the courts in New South Wales are committing treason every day of the week. They are murdering people. They have a hit squad called Freemason Rifle Club. The New South Wales Police Commissioner and the state, the corporation calling itself NSW Gov, are actually passing statutes to say that if you take down a tower that's trespassing on you, that is a nuisance to you, they can murder you and call you a terrorist. Well, a corporation operating within a geographical boundary called Terra Australis is a terrorist organisation. Right? NSW Gov is a terrorist organisation. Tyranny, T-Y, A-I and U are all interchangeable, and I'll explain why, because tyranny is tyranny, yeah? And tyranny is only committed by governments. There have been 222 million people killed in the last 239 years by governments. Governments have killed 222 million people in the last 239 years, and most of them were done by the United States government. New South Wales versus A.B.R. extends the employee's liability. Now, in this it says that police are not liable, okay? If you can find out the police officers, a police officer is not liable. You cannot sue under their act a New South Wales police officer, but you can sue the man in his private capacity for trespassing on your body, assaulting you, terrorising you, right? So, let's find the word police officer. Allow seem to men with police officer arresting son. Exemplary damages, you can look all this up. You know, here's the link here, Quizlet.com. Crown contended that employees' tortious conduct, so the employees, so they reclassify them, right? Tortious conduct, exemplary damages, aggravated damages, Crown liable for damages for tortious police officers performing their duties. Crown liable damages, Crown liable exemplary damages, concerns police officers' prisons. Conduct employees, decades, employees, conduct, punishment, law grounds, occurrence, lawsuit, distinguished to physical cause. Anyway, it goes on to say that police officers are not liable. They're not liable, but the man in his private capacity is, because he trespassed on you, knowing that he broke the rules of common law. He created a tort. He tortured you. The following of the Federation is a Code of Arms Australia was granted by King Edward V on 7th of May 2009. The original design is thought to have been inspired in 1805. Let's look at King Edward. Right, so this is King Edward that is said to have created the Code of Arms of Australia, the kangaroo and the emu. So let's go to King Edward. Where's King Edward? Oh shit, where'd he go? Coronation of King Edward. Kangaroo and emu. Oh, I might be doing an overlap here. So, following Australia Federation, King Edward on the 7th of May 2008, originally designed. So if we go, the coronation King Edward of the Kingdom, Dominions, British Empire of India was due to take place on the 1937. Preparations already begun as a sovereign, so he started to advocate in 1936. So there's a time disparity there, so I've got to check that. Now, essentially, what we've got going on here is a privately owned company with no certificate of proclamation for it to exist, with no referendum for it to exist, with no referendum for us to put ourselves inside a privately owned company or our property, constitutes treason. Right now, we talk about this is 1900 Commonwealth of Australia. This is 1986, right? This didn't come into play until 1986. These guys didn't come into play until after 1986. Right, this explains to you the lex, the points, the periods. This tells you there's treaties on this stuff. It's been to use the language, you have to use the treaties that establish the language. Okay, so we know that Oxford is where all the leaders go. We know that Cambridge is where all the handlers go. Rowan went to Cambridge, Oxford and Cambridge. That's the Alpha Future doorway, right? That's the bend, the bridge, right, between 2 points, my mind to your mind, control the mind. We know that this is a privately owned company in America, which is created the A.B.R, which is issuing ABNs to another entity, which is a creation of the privately owned company. Okay, we know that the A.B.R, the Australian Business, was created in 1999. We know that the New South Wales Police Force was created in 1990. So how did these guys exist when all they have is an ABN, which is issued by the A.B.R? Right, that's why they were released into the public, and then they became New South Wales Police Force. And then if you check out their badges and stuff, then they went back to being the New South Wales Police Service until they got an ABN. Right, so these guys are claiming they're around in 1910. They weren't. They aren't. Right, these guys were created in, I think it's 1922 or 1931. And these guys were created, the Commonwealth Taxation Office, right? Now the Deputy Tax Commissioner was not, there is no documents for the creation of the Deputy Tax Commissioner. Right? His appointment was done illegally. So the Deputy Tax Commissioner created the Australian Taxation Office. So they're also illegal. Right? They were created and registered in America. They are legal in America, but they're not legal here, and they can't threaten anyone in Australia. This is why there's a clampdown. They're using a fake virus. They're dosing everyone with metallics right now, and the metallics are basically getting in preparation for 5G. They'll turn 5G on, and everyone's noses will just start bleeding. They'll just start falling down, and they'll go full martial law. Alright, so this is the Commonwealth Taxation Office, federal, and that was created in 1910. Okay. This is a privately owned company, right? It created the A.T.O, it created the A.B.R, it created, and then those entities were used as mechanisms to create NSW Gov, and once NSW Gov was created, then it created the NSW Police Force. They all have ABNs issued by this privately owned company, right? So they're all illegal. They have no referendum for the creation of this because they're all registered to the United States. The term vessel of the United States is used in the title means a vessel belonging in whole or in part to the United States, or any citizen thereof, or any corporation created by the United States or under the laws of the United States, or any state or territory, district or possession of the United States. So they're registered. Commonwealth of Australia is a privately owned company registered to the United States. And then they issue paperwork, and then you sign up to that paperwork without knowingly doing so. So therefore, the Commonwealth of Australia is a vessel of the United States. It's a citizen. It's a corporation. And then if you check out the Lovio case, the Lovio v. Boyd, it clearly states that any government using private Federal Reserve notes holds the rank of a mere private citizen. And it says any government. This is a finding, right, in case law, and so it's applicable here. And then it also says that any entity calling itself government using private Federal Reserve notes is wholly and separate from government. Okay, so therefore by the classification and registration to the United States, which is a bankrupt as of 1950, they did register you to a bankrupt where no debt existed. They did introduce a private Federal Reserve note and a postal code to say you're under military law, under an occupation, and they have muddied the waters between the public and the private. Right, they've muddied the waters between the public and the private. And how do they do that? They put you in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. You need to speak to births, deaths and marriages and ask them to take you out of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Now, having said that, they're a corporate entity. So what you're saying is take me off your books. Right? And here you go again. United States means a fucking corporation. Right? Now, history in the New South Wales Police Force goes back to 78. It doesn't. It goes back to 1990. This is Google. This is fraud. Now, AI was set up by the NSA. NSA are privately owned arseholes out of Europe, all the bankers, because they're private. Public can't touch them, which is the American military and all kind of stuff. And essentially, that's why they go around murdering all these fucking. They go around murdering all these soldiers who are bodyguards and everything else, and they're trafficking in children, and there's supposed to be a treaty between the living and the dead, right? and they're not supposed to be able to harm. I've got to find it, but there's a treaty between the living and the dead, and they're not supposed to be able to harm the dead, right? The public. They can contract you into death, but they can't kill you, right? And so the little ones can't contract, and so they get the parents to sign them over as indentured slaves, and they're going off and murdering them, which they're only signing the birth certificate because they were drugged, which is breach of trust. So this is taught trespass to land, lecture 4, Quizlet. Right? These people do great work, but they make these stupid names, so you're never going to find it. It should say taught trespass to land. That should be the name of the bloody thing. Right? And then we've got, I've got to look this up. King Edward abdicated in 1937. So inspired by Bowman flag. Where is it? Yes, so this was created, coat of arms, kangaroo image created in 1908. Right, standing grassy mound above the shield, crest, 7-pointed star, Federation on a wreath. Right, but Federation was this thing here, that's the Commonwealth, right? So they got you this, and then they were getting this ready, right? Now, you're probably thinking I've kind of undone myself here. I haven't. I'll show you why. So the Australian this is Wikipedia line. This is completely wrong. The Australian Taxation Office was created. It's the Commonwealth. I've deleted it. But the Commonwealth of Australia Federal Tax Commissioner's Office, something like that, right? And this is this is illegal. This doesn't mention that the A.T.O is illegal, right? And so this guy abdicated on the 17th of December 1936. So I've got to find out when he was in, his time period, and I'll explain why right now. So the New South Wales Police so these guys were created in 1986 officially. I think it was registered in 1933, brought into being in 1986 proper. They're saying this is the Constitution, this is the government now. Penrith Courthouse has this coat of arms out the front. And what they've done is these guys created NSW Gov, which is a corporation because it's got an ABN. Then they here's the old statute book from New South Wales government, Department of Justice, all that kind of stuff. And then they just took all their seals and copied it and put this over the top. And they went through over the last 30 years deleting like rape and all this kind of stuff, right? So the police can put stuff in your mouths and stuff. So they deleted all these acts while leaving all the old ones, and they're going through. They removed section 184 fraudulent impersonation down to section 167. They deleted all those acts out of that act book of actors, because I was making YouTube channels on it. And so they did it illegally because they don't have a certificate of proclamation to do it. They don't have the right to do it. It's the private land corporation. So these guys created NSW Gov. They hijacked all the books, put their symbols and codes on it, changed all the paperwork. Then they created the A.B.R. Sorry, they created the A.B.R. Then created NSW Gov. Then they created the A.T.O had been around for a while, and then the A.T.O started issuing ABNs, right, in 1999. The New South Wales Police started operating in 1999, and the New South Wales Police Force, and they only have an ABN. That's their only claim to fame. And who issues the ABNs? A privately owned American company, right, called the Commonwealth of Australia, right? So now we're going to come out of this. We know that the New South Wales Police Force, NSW Gov, is not the New South Wales Government. We know that New South Wales NSW Police Force is only has an ABN. These guys only have an ABN issued by the A.B.R, handed out by the A.T.O, which is not a legal entity. A.B.R is not a legal entity, and these guys are not a legal entity. Okay, so now let's go for the fucking knockout punch. All right, I'll just go for the actually, hang on a sec. So this thing here, this is a knockout punch, and this backs it up, right? All these cases overturn New South Wales, right, for trespass. Trespass applies to your body, it applies to your liberty, it applies to your travelling, and fraud destroys trust. They can't say your automobile is a vehicle, because vehicle comes from vehere, which means to travel. So you need a license to operate a travel, right? And then driver is commercial, it means to be employed, right? It's a commercial capacity. They're saying you're the public, you can't be the public, you're the private. Right? You need to terminate all contracts with the state. So these cases overrule New South Wales. Now, if you look at every other state, you don't actually have to go to the High Court. So that tells you that every court in New South Wales is sitting while interested and are committing treason. Right? Now, if we come here, this is Molike v. Chapman. Right? This is the 17th of May 2000. It's a High Court transcript 242, and I love seeing this. Molike, a plaintiff, Deputy Tax Commissioner, defendant. Love it, love it, love it. So we come down. This is going to be real quick. Fitzgibbon, one of your points, it seems to me, in the material is that no statute has been passed since 1931. Has any validity? Is that effectively your submission? Well, if they haven't been passed properly within federal, they definitely haven't been passed within the state. Those two matters I've surmised what the submission is. Well, I am appointed on a statute. What's the point of applying to me? According to you, nothing I do says any validity. No, that's not quite correct. Remember, CO is contract, right? Comply, coerce, conform, and two R's. There's two men there, and rec just is a body. Yeah, so not quite correct, right? So now we'll go to my stickies. I'll come down to my stickers because I want to get this done quick. I want to keep your attention if I haven't already lost it. I apologise. Okay, so His Honour, there are no facts. Okay, so the court does not give advisory opinions. This court does not give advisory opinions. His Honour, in the event of winding up orders being set aside for the full restitution, we again, that raises the same question about something that may or may not occur legally or illegally in the future. There are no facts. Exactly. Then the costs. Then what about Orders 5 through the declaration that the Australian Taxation Office is a body without a legal persona. The Australian Tax Office is not a party to this litigation. So this is their trick. So it's not a legal persona. And then he also states that the tax office is not a party to litigation. It's the Deputy Tax Commissioner who is appointed legally. Mr. Logan, it is not, and it has. I'll highlight this as well. This is beautiful. This bit, it's lovely. It is not, and it has declarations which has some utility. His Honour, the court does not make a declaration in respect of a non-existent personality. Right? You can read this. I'll hold it for 3 seconds. Mr. Logan, the Australian Taxation Office is not a legal personality, is it? Mr. Logan, it is not. His Honour, it is not mentioned in the Act, is it? It is not a personality. It is not created by the Act. It is not mentioned anywhere in the Act. The office. And no, it's not. I think I can say with some. I can say that with some, it is a big act to read, but I cannot. Alright, now let's go for the next. Okay, so where's the next one? So basically, no, it does not matter, but the problem, as much as documentation was in fact being taken out in the name of the Australian Tax Office and the Deputy Tax Commissioner. So I'll just highlight this as well. I'll highlight in orange because it's the lead up to it. Right? A bit brighter. So it's probably a bad colour. We'll go a lot of colour. We'll go green, eh? Oop. We'll go the old green, so it's a bit easy to read. So no, it does not. But the problem was that much of the documentation was in fact being taken out in the name of the. So all the documentation that these guys are using but the tax commissioner is using, is in the name of the A.T.O. and the Deputy Tax Commissioner. Neither one of them exist. That does not matter if in fact that does not matter because no, it does not. But the problem was that much of the documentation was in fact being taken out in the name of a non-legal entity and also a non-legal entity. That does not matter. If in fact the Australian Taxation Office is not legal personality, there is no point and no efficacy in the court making declarations in respect of it. Now, and what is the document that you say was taken out to use your language in the name of the Australian Taxation Office, which document is in your material. Your Honour, I would reserve that opinion, right? So he's reserving it because he doesn't know. He's a QC barrister, right? He's a QC barrister. No, you cannot. We are here to argue and hear the matter now. The court time is quite valuable. I have a lot of things to do. What is the document that refers to the Australian Taxation Office? Your Honour, I am indebted. If you take credit statutory demands for payment of debt, it seems you have been signed by Mr. Steve Chapman, and Deputy Tax Commissioner, and so on business for on behalf of the Commonwealth of Australia creditor. Now this is interesting. I'll come back to this later, right? So I'll just make this green. I'll come back to it later because this is set in stone, right? So I want to chew it out. So now we go to the next one. Okay, so this is on it. You can see that there is no point in making any declaration in respect of a factual situation which does not exist. It is not pleaded, it cannot be pleaded, and does not exist. Right, this is all in reference to the A.T.O, the Deputy Tax Commissioner, and these two entities were used to create the A.B.R, the NSW Gov and the New South Wales Police Force. How do I know? Because they all have ABMs. That's all they have. They have nothing else. Right? If the Australian Taxation Office does not exist and the Deputy Commissioner is not validly appointed, and all who sail with her, it would have to be in some doubt. Yes, it is. Anyway, statutory demand notice served. I'm going to do a clip on this because I've just discovered something before I did this clip. I've just got to stay focused, right? And so I'm just going to race down here, the next one. Administration. So what actually happens is I've highlighted this stuff and I'll do a documentary on it. But effectively, a lot of the seals and everything were issued by public servants, and they had no authority to do any such thing. Okay, and so variant of the rights, section 6, unparticularised. We know that the factual, we know that is factually incorrect, and the Australian Taxation Office issued them a yes. So much is admitted on the pleadings in the defence that the Australian Taxation Office is not a legal entity, right? And I'll just highlight that, make that just the lead in to the conversation. Yes, we know so much is admitted on pleadings in defence that the Australian Taxation Office is not a legal entity, right? This is Mr. Logan. But also, it's factually incorrect to say that the non-existent legal personality. But also, it is factually incorrect to say that the that's right. To say that the non-existent legal personality admitted the pleadings that the defence taxation is not a legal entity. But it's also factually incorrect to say that the non-existent legal personality, so it's non-existent here in Australia, it's not a legal entity. Right, so it's legal in America, it's registered there, but it's not legal here. And I'll just scroll down. So, okay, so and it says it has not been given the royal assent in conformity with the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution. Why is it said it has not been given that consent? The defect seems to be that the Lord Gower's commission was signed by King George V, and before he came here, King George died, and his successor was never crowned. That is in some way then said to mean that the appointment was bullshit. Edward never had a coronation. Yes. So that's backing up my claim before. Just that, for me, the timeline is a bit out. So the creation of the creation of the this is talking about the creation of the A.T.O and the Deputy Tax Commissioner. That's all this is talking about. I'm mixing up with the coat of arms, right? So King Edward never had a coronation, right? Yes, His Honour. So well, as I understand the argument, there was no King of England. Right, so there's no King of England for the creation of the A.T.O and the Deputy Tax Commissioner. There was no royal assent, because King George died before he came to Australia, and Edward was never coronated. He abdicated, right? So that's a new twist. Commonwealth cannot corporation. Okay, so this is pretty good. In a statement of claim, it does what on the face of things is a reply, but we come to that at 8.8, Your Honour, is a proposition that the Commonwealth cannot use corporations law to, in effect, to collect a debt. Right? That is what I understand. The answer to that is in my submission that one of the states' propositions, section 208, in the case of income tax, and there are like provisions of group tax establish debt due to the Commonwealth. And they go on to basically kick it, right? Kick the point seems to be the letter of patent, which so the point seems to be that the letters patent, which we reconstituted the office of Governor of Queensland in 1996, bore the Great Seal of the United Kingdom as well as Her Majesty's signature on it. It is then said that the amount to an assertion of sovereignty by a foreign power. So the Australia Act was said to have been signed in December 1985, and then you have a foreign power. Where'd it go? There you go. And as well as as well by the Majesty's signature, sovereignty by a foreign power, and the United Kingdom, in a way, foreign means future and reign. So in a way, forbidden by the Australia Act. That is, as I said, that is one which has a difficulty that when one traces through the letters patent concerned, which are referred to in the pleadings document, they are signed by Her Majesty on the 14th of February 1986, proclaimed on the 3rd of March 1986. So signed on February, proclaimed on March. It is alleged paragraph 6 that it was on the 4th of December 1995. So I'm going to check this. So royal assent, yes, that is right, but proclaimed into force later. So it is alleged paragraph 6 that it was proclaimed on the 4th of December 1985. Royal assent, yes, that is right, but proclaimed into force later. And so is that right through what I was given, the royal assent on the 4th of December 1995? Anyone's reading this and they can explain this a bit better, because this is a bit muddy to me because I'm sort of doing this on the fly. Yes, when you say royal assent, or the Governor General's assent, would it be? I think it was one. I think that one was reserved for Her Majesty. Right, so it was given royal assent on the 4th of December. Letters patent were signed on the 14th of February, when was the Act proclaimed, 3rd of March. So it was given royal assent on the 4th of December. Letters patent were signed on the 14th of February, proclaimed for March. But assume for present purposes that this had happened after the Act was proclaimed. So when was the Act proclaimed? The contention is that the Justice Mule who dealt with this matter was not lawfully appointed. Is this the contention? Yes. All right. Oh, sorry. Because it would seem that a domino effect that would say that the office of the Governor did not exist, therefore the Commission could not be signed off by Major General Anderson, I think, was in office at that stage, and therefore the Commission was invalid, therefore his Honour appointment was invalid. That seems to be the chain of things. His Honour, His Excellency Major General Anderson was not validly appointed. Why? He holds office actually pursuant to the State Act, which came into force and suspended the operation of these letters patent, which is the Constitution, which it can't do. Right? The state can't suspend the Constitution. Office of the Governor acts which refer to these letters patent as gazetted and suspends their operation, and provides for there to be an Office of the Governor in the state. So that is strictly technical sense. The point is one without what? A validly appointed governor, right? They suspended the Constitution, and they can't do it. It's a very technical point. So if there's a good technical answer, there is no reason why it shouldn't be given, right? With respect to the rights. So the 1987 Act effectively acknowledges this office. Is that what you say? That is right. I have a copy for your honour. Justice Muir was not sworn in long after that act. In the matter of notaries, yes. All right. Thank you for the disposers. Points that are taken. All the points that are taken, or those that are your arguments and the points that are taken. Yes, if the matter, as Your Honour, was missions really go merit in terms of statement and claims, but step back from points raised in state court proceedings. And let's get a bit more. So you were on your own, but Fitzgibbon, you were on your own, but I may point this out that there are so many technical, and please, I do not want to put a gun. I do not want Your Honour to think I am holding a gun to the court's head. I am not, but in fact there is a reference to the application to the United Nations, which is a private model international law, which is illegal for the public. Application to the United Nations, and they are coming down here because of the replies given over when we attain sovereignty or not. So I'm not, but in fact there is a reference to the application to the UN committee, and they are coming down here because of the replies given over when we attain sovereignty or not. They're coming down here because of replies given over when we attain sovereignty or not. So technicality aside, they have very, very important consequences. Right, so this is in reference to the United Nations. You say I'm not putting a gun to the court's head. I am not. But in fact, there is reference to an application. There's reference to an application to a UN committee. So they're applying to a committee, which means they're below the UN, and they are coming down here because of replies given over when we attain sovereignty or not. When we attain sovereignty or not. So whether we attain sovereignty or not. So technicalities aside, they have a very, very important consequence. I'll just read this bit. I haven't read it. I can't remember reading it. I really do not come here today, Your Honour, prepared to argue the interim point, but I do have an excellent parliament. I know I read this, provided friends. It's just waffle, right? So the return itself acknowledged a debt. So now they're talking about the tax return, okay? So this is a trap. So if you fill out a tax return, you're saying you're a taxpayer. And if you fill out the tax return, you're saying you're a taxpayer, and you are saying you are you, right? Ye are saying that ye are you, a debtor, IOU. The return itself acknowledged a debt, though. I mean, I wonder whether, even independently of the Act, if you put in an income tax return in which you say you owe X dollars to the Commissioner for Income, you are immediately acknowledging a debt yourself, even if they're... So this entity can be non-legal. It can be from another country. If you fill the paperwork out and you say you identify as that entity and you participate in that system, who are they to tell you to stop? If you want to give the money, your sweat equity, do it. And this is how the it's not up to the court to go out and find what we call constructive trusts, where money's been stolen by a trustee and it's been used to buy other property, and he's benefiting from that, and he's got it in his own name. That's a constructive trust, right? Because it's been constructed by fraud. And so what he's saying here is the return itself is illegal. So if you fill a return out, you're saying, I agree, I've got a debt. I mean, I wonder whether, even independently of the Act, if you put an income tax return in which you say you owe X dollars to the Commissioner for Income Tax, you are immediately acknowledging a debt yourself. The YOU means a debt. You are making an admission that you owe it for income tax. I do not know whether you even need a provision deeming provision. You may or may not. but I do not see why that should not be an admission against interest of an acknowledgement of a debt. So now it's just talking about vagaries of contracts. It's not talking about the debt. The whole thing is a construct. Right? If you identify something, then that something is legislated to do something, then you have to do that thing. If you don't identify as that thing, then they have no powers to compel you. They've gone in, they've taken over the land titles office, right? And they've turned your private property into, and they've turned you into the public, right? And they're saying it's public property. It's all fraud. Yes, well, in essence, the allegation is, in broad terms, in the fact that what has been said is, although there is power to delegate from the commissioner to a deputy commissioner, the delegation beyond that is where the problem lies. So he can delegate to a deputy commissioner, but the deputy commissioner was never created, and the acts to create the A.T.O was never created either. That's right. All right. Look, I understand. Mr. Fitzgibbon, the 86 Constitution argument, Your Honour, is very clear. If you take a timeline, the fact is the Great Seal came down, signed by Arneson, who is a public servant. He can't do it. Right? I am able to provide Your Honour with proof of that. 5 days outside when Britain said in her Act under Section 10, after the commencement of this Act, Her Majesty's Government of the United Kingdom shall have no responsibility for the government of any state. So any state, and Queensland of course had a special mention. So the Commonwealth of Australia can't have the Queen of Australia as an identifier because it's not Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, and that's the only queen that the Constitution before 1986 acknowledges. And the creation of the 1986 constitutional argument is a fiction. Right? It is nothing more than a fiction, and they are trying to give you, the Freemasons are trying to give you over to the United Nations. They're trying to say you are a sinner, they're trying to say you are a debtor. Right? And they're going to wipe the floor with your family and your kids. Right? This is my like of E. Chapman. I'll try and put it in the description if it fits in. I think it takes 5,000 words. And this is a High Court transcript. Right, this proves, right, so this, I was just highlighted, didn't actually change anything. So this proves that this is not a legal entity, the Australia Act operating under this. Okay, it also proves that they're turning their head from the Constitution, which is treason. This is a privately owned company. There's never been a referendum for anyone to say yes, we come under that. The Constitution overrides all state law. NSW Gov only has an ABN issued by the A.T.O from the A.B.R, and they're all created by the privately owned company, right, registered in America. So NSW government is not a legal entity. NSW police is not a legal entity. They're not validly proclamated, therefore they are not legal. And they are legal in the United States, they're just not legal here. The removal of your right to own and bear arms and the protection of your property is also illegal, right? Because there's no valid they're not validly proclamated, and they are born out here. Police officers have no powers to arrest or detain a citizen for the purpose of questioning him or facilitating their investigation. It matters not whether the questioning of an investigation is for the purpose of enabling them to ascertain whether the person is guilty of a crime to have been committed, or for the purpose of enabling them to discover whether a crime has or has not been committed. If the police do so act and purport to exercise such power, their conduct is not only obstructive of civil liberties, but it is also unlawful to regime versus about a full bench of law and territory. Right now, that is not inside Australia, because Australia is the 6 states. It doesn't include the Northern Territory, but it's case law within the Commonwealth, right? And it uses priests, which are barristers. They have to study the priestly 11. The police do not. Police are not legally qualified. Police can't even give legal advice. The police cannot cite. The police cannot cite legislation as they are giving legal advice. It's illegal to give legal advice. It's an ancient principle of common law that a person not under arrest has no obligation to stop for police or answer their questions, and there is no statute which removes that right. There is no statute that removes their right. Right, and there is no statute that removes COVID-19. There is no statute that removes the right. This is the one you want, right? The conferring of such a power on police would be a substantial detraction from fundamental freedoms which have been guaranteed to citizens by common law for centuries. Now, we know that if you give your son or your daughter trivalent or quadrivalent, 5 in every 115 cases are turning up with coronavirus, right? So we know that the coronavirus is being piggybacked inside the vaccines. This has happened for the last 70 years. There are so many instances. In fact, every vaccine that I know of has had other viruses in there. They can't separate them. And then what they do is they turn on 5G, they're hitting it with the metallic dust, and as soon as they turn on 5G, you turn into an antenna and you just get fried. Your nose starts bleeding, and then they declare full-scale martial law, and that's when you lose everything. There is no common law powers vested in police giving them unfettered right to stop or detain a person and seeking identification. This was overturned because the fuckwit QC didn't talk about the fact that there hasn't been a correct promissory oath done since 1897, whatever it was, promissory oath 1897. So, and also they're in breach of, there's no statute that removes this right, and they're saying it's a vehicle, it's not, they're enforcing copyright. So they took the manufacturer's certificate of origin, they tell you they're selling you the car, they're not selling you the car, they're selling you the right of use, which is fraud, right? Because no one would buy it. And then people go, well, you have all these crazy people. If someone cuts you off in traffic and you get the registration, right, or you get the identification plate off the car, right, you can tort them into court. And people go, oh, I can't do that. Well, that's what the police do. That's all they're doing. The police are saying you're in breach of a contract. The police have no authority. There is no statute that removes the right of liberty. There is no statute that removes the right of liberty. There is no statute that removes the right of liberty unless you've gone to war with someone. Alright, now I'll plug this in. I'll go to the Lever Code. Let's go to the Lever Code. This is General Orders 100. This is the blueprint. It was 1863, and this is the blueprint for an occupation. Now the occupation is based on a debt. The 1863 was in when America. 1865 technically is when America became bankrupt because the Franciscans, the Libers. They created a wall between the north and the south, and here's what it says here: a place or district stands in occupation, is occupied by an enemy, stands in consequence of the occupation. So if they're there, if there's an occupier, they're a standing army, right? And they have where is it? Proclamation. Martial law shall be immediate effect. Consuls, invading army, proclamation, declaration, military law. So they don't have to make a proclamation. Well, let's get Article 13. Military jurisdiction of two kinds. First, that which is conferred by statute. So police are enforcing military law based on a bankruptcy. Second, that which is conferred by the common law of war. You have to have gone to war with your fellow man. Military offences under statute law must be tried in a manner wherein directed. That's why none of the fucking acts in New South Wales win in a federal court, because they're not statutes, right? They're not statutes, and you haven't committed any common law unless you enter into a contract. But military offences do not come within the statute, right? But military offences which do not come within statute is telling you, right? So it's a military offence. So it's common law. It doesn't enforce that. It must be tried and punished under a common law of war. Right, so the jury makes the determination on the severity, and only magistrates and judges can't fine you in contempt of court. Only a jury can. They can recommend to the jury and they can recommend the severity, but they can't. It has to be a jury. Right, the character of courts which is exercised these jurisdictions depends upon the local courts each particular country. Enemies of the United States, the first is so every citizen of the United States is an enemy of the United States based on the Trading with the Enemy Act amendment in 6th of October 1933. Exercise martial courts while cases which do not come within the rules, articles of war, jurisdiction conferred by statutes of the martial court are tried by military commission. So if you look up red-headed woman drives without a license, she tells you that she does not identify as any of the entities, and she doesn't consent to participate in a debt-based war. Right. So there you have it. The New South Wales Police, the entity calling itself government, is a privately owned company. They created the A.B.R and the A.T.O. They issued ABNs. They issued titles called NSW Gov and NSW Police Force. They gave them ABNs, and essentially they have taken over the statute book. They've deleted all the statutes which make them accountable, and they're just putting in their own stuff while pretending to maintain the old. And then while they're doing that, they're saying all the old stuff's irrelevant. And if you read any case law, it actually tells you any sort of treaties, first in time, first in law. So the public's getting told it doesn't matter, but anyone who's got half a brain knows it does matter. And that's why my channel's getting blocked. So I've got like 1,000 in the last 3 months. I've got 1,000 subscriptions, but only 100 people, and it's all technical stuff I'm putting up. But only 100, 200 people watch the clips. So New South Wales Police Force, NSW Gov, A.T.O, A.B.R, entity calling itself Commonwealth Australia, the Rat and the Chook, they're all non-legal entities. Right? The removal of the statutes from the New South Wales government and the federal statutes removing our right to hold and bear arms hold no weight in law. They're not valid. Right? They're not validly proclamated. Right? So, and there is no statute that removes your right to freedom of liberty, freedom of expression. Right? You can't catch a virus. Put a jumper on when you go out. It's raining, you'll catch the flu. So you didn't catch the flu from someone. You developed the flu because you ran your body down. You exposed yourself to toxins and stress, and then the body releases proteins called osomes, which are viruses. I'll probably mispronounce that. Which are viruses, which are surfactants, which are lubricant, which when mixed with a solvent, which is water, is used to flush out the toxin, which when you spit a big rubbery golly out, piece of phlegm, it doesn't stick to you because it's lubricated, but it does stick to anything that's dry because your mouth is wet and it's a solvent and it allows it to fly out of your mouth. Right? So in Wuhan, they immunised everyone with coronavirus, rotavirus, trivalent, quadrivalent, which has the coronavirus in it, and then they hit everyone. There's a high temperature incinerator in Wuhan. They're protesting that. There was about to be a worldwide protest on 5G. They roll out the coronavirus, and essentially what happens is they're blaming the coronavirus for what 5G is actually doing. And the NYC, New York County ICU head doctor, he's a professor of medicine, said that a virus is not causing the ARD, the acute respiratory distress, where they can't breathe. Oxygen fixes it. Respirators collapse the lung, and that's why they're rolling out the respirators. They're pushing too much volume as well. They're pushing 4 times too much volume, which causes the alveoli to die. The lack of oxygen absorption is stopping the hemoglobin for uptaking oxygen, and then you're running out of oxygen, you go blue. And they're making movies about it. The India, 1.3 billion people, only 500 cases of coronavirus. Why? Because they're immunising there, but no one's died. No one's died in India. Why is that? Because they don't have 5G. They don't have 5G in India, so it's not killing off any old people. The old people are too fit anyway. And the other thing too is they have a low immunisation rate as well. So as a test case, all of the people who are dying, they're dying in cities, and in Africa, people are trying to leave the cities to get out of the city because they know about the 5G, and they've been herded back in with tear gas. They've been herded back into the city, They're not allowed to move. They're getting whipped and beaten if they try and buy food. And I'll just go and pull the clip up. If you can bear with me. I can't pull it up because I don't have to type in password. So yeah, essentially, the New South Wales have no authority to stop you on the side of the road, and all you need to do is type out that the trespass, the cases that I showed you, and deprivation of liberty. Alright, police powers. Sorry. Alright, it's me done.